Yeah, good morning. Can you see me?
Yes, sir. Hello, sir. Hello, yes. You need to adjust your camera. You need to adjust your camera a little bit. Yes, now, yes.
Great.
Yeah. So, can we join in other Shri K. Manohar Raja, Executive Director, Enterprise Business, Railtel? Sir, can you join in?
Dr. Raja, Mr. Raja, we request you to kindly switch on your webcam, Mr. Manohar Raja.
Arnob Roy from Tejas, Sudhir Kundar from DE-CIX, Shailendra Singh from Shelter Telecom, Rajneesh Garg from Vodafone, Vivek Dua sir is already there. And Shashidhar, yes, Arnob Roy is there. Yes, Raja Saab, how are you, sir? Nice to see you. So let's start this technical session. Yes, Arnob Roy ji, how are you? All well?
Doing fine. Thank you very much.
Very good. So without taking much time, let me introduce the session chairman, Shri Vivek Dua, General Manager, CFA of Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited. The topic is FTTH technology innovation, key business drivers and successful future business model for digital India. The first speaker of the session will be Mr. Paul Hubbard, Director of Business Development Network Connectivity Comscope. Did he join us? Hi, Sudhir.
Sir, his video
Mr. Paul's video to play.
Yeah. So, Dua Sahab, you can invite one by one now. So, first of all, Mr. Paul's video will run, and then Mr. Manohar Raja will present his presentation. Then Arnob Roy, then Sudhir Kunde, then Shailendra Singh, then Rajneesh Garg, then your closing marks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Shashiji, for inviting me to this program. It's an honor, and I welcome all other participants to this program. We have a very esteemed speaker lineup for today's program, and FTTH India itself is a very encouraging theme, where connecting every home is the mission, and because every office today is at home, so practically you end up connecting all offices also. At BSNL, definitely, again, I would repeat that the last year has been one of the most challenging ones. At the same time, it has thrown enormous opportunities in terms of digital enablement required in each home. And luckily, we already had kickstarted our program of partnership for rolling out FTTH services. So the innovation inside BSNL which happened was particularly with respect to the partnership program and the digital enablement of the partners. Because once partners are digitally enabled, they become equipped to digitally enable the customers also. So that's a broader outline I wanted to share. And definitely I hope the speakers today would enlighten all of us on the innovation programs they have run through, and they have enabled their team members and their customers to make them really happy about the digital journey. So thank you once again, Shashiji, and I welcome all the speakers once again and request Mr. Paul, who is the first speaker today's lineup, to kindly start the presentation and the discussion. Thank you.
So we will be playing a presentation of Mr. Paul. Just 1 minute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I trust the conference is going well. My name is Paul Hubbard. I work for Comscope. Apologies I can't be there in person at the moment. Unfortunately, I live in North Carolina, USA, and the time difference is a little bit excluding for me to attend in person. However, I'd like to spend a few minutes discussing the importance of ODN infrastructure stability to support the migration to next generation networks. As we all know, technology is rapidly evolving to support the needs of future networks. Forces for both physical infrastructure requirements as well as applications that are carried over those networks are driving the need for better network infrastructure to provide lower latency, higher bandwidth, performance platform. As we define new applications and ways to leverage that data that run over the network, Quality of service and reliability will need to become increasingly important, especially when we consider critical services such as Industry 4.0, autonomy for vehicles, and even digital economy. We've seen that network infrastructures installed today will typically see around 4 generations of transmission system technology delivered over them over their expected lifetime. Ensuring the quality of a network built today to an appropriate level will reduce the excessive remediation throughout the life cycle of the network and therefore drive down the OPEX expenditure. As demonstrated recently by the advent of 5G, more access points to more locations will be needed to support the infrastructure build. This trend will continue into the future. Ensuring a network is flexible enough to handle adds, moves, and changes will be a critical part of designing and defining what your network looks like. It's increasingly important that engineers, technologists, and network architects are involved in upgrading, planning, or building fiber information networks. Choose products that will support the networks of tomorrow. So looking at some network challenges more from a business perspective, we're seeing the constant rise of data consumption, which will be a trend that will continue on into the future, whilst at the same time the average revenue per bit will be on the decline. So maintaining that profitability will require some changes in the operating model and how you drive efficiency in the network construction. Increasing flexibility within the network today will likely address future application requirements. As much as possible, we want to maximize the utilization of existing infrastructure as well to support these applications. Some revenue generating opportunities around your current infrastructure will include changing the service offering, whether it be tiered pricing, delivering more for a higher price, could be serving adjacent markets such as the enterprise market or the mobility backhaul. A bit later on in the presentation, we'll talk about network convergence and how we can leverage this infrastructure to support multiple service offerings. Network convergence is a tool that we can leverage to maximize the infrastructure capabilities, ultimately to lead to an improvement on return on investment. Building out a ubiquitous fiber infrastructure, which will act as a delivery platform for multiple services. One example of this would be sharing physical assets between your fixed and wireless infrastructure. This could not only save you day one cost savings in terms of CapEx expenditure, but also operating the model in the future. FTTH networks will need to augment to FTTX applications, supporting the backhaul of small cells as we see the small cells being proliferated deeper and deeper into the network. One mechanism we can leverage is WDM technology, wavelength division multiplexing. Leveraging multiple wavelengths over a single fiber will provide capacity and allow you to do your 5G backhaul applications. So as we've seen, the application drivers are driving for more and more bandwidth. That means the PON standards also have to change, and networks need to evolve to meet the application drivers. Today, GPON and sometimes EPON are by far the most common deployment technologies, but we're seeing a lot of migration to XGS-PON, NG-PON2, or other future PON technologies such as 25G EPON or 50 EPON. So looking at the network as it stands today, typically you will have a GPON OLT in the central office that will run out to your passive optical layer. In this case, we have two splits, so we have our primary split and our access split, and then that fiber will ultimately reside into the customer's premise where it will be terminated onto a GPON ONT. With the addition of coexistence, it allows you to provide the upgrade path to the future next generation PON infrastructure, such as XGS-PON, for example. If we put an XGS-PON OLT in the central office alongside of a GPON, we can actually feed that signal through the coexistence, and it can coexist on the passive optical layer all the way to the customer premise, and the only upgrade that needs to be done is at the CPE equipment at the customer's premise. You will note here that additional customers who are already using GPON are unaffected by this XGS PON upgrade for that particular customer. Coexistence can also add additional services such as OTDR monitoring, WDM networks, which can facilitate backhaul of wireless networks, and also point-to-point applications for more business-grade services. Considering the migration of GPON to XGS-PON and looking at how the wavelength utilization will impact the way your network operates. So today, GPON operates at an upstream wavelength of 1310 and a downstream wavelength of 1490. As we migrate to XGS-PON, those wavelengths change. It goes to 1270 in the upstream and 1578 in the downstream. Those changes in wavelengths will have an impact to the way your network operates. You've got to consider network integrity and fiber management. As the frequency reduces and the wavelength increases, fiber becomes more sensitive to fiber bends and therefore will increase the amount of attenuation in your network. Splitter performance also needs to be considered. Are your splitters that you've deployed for GPON today applicable and within the performance requirements for XGS-PON? And related to that, the quality of components and the conformance to the standards. GR1209 and GR1221 actually define the long-term operational requirements for passive optical devices. When migrating to next generation PON, the importance of good fiber management cannot be underestimated. This image was actually taken outside of our Mumbai office in India and gives a clear demonstration of poor fiber management. Not only does this increase your operational expenditure from an asset identification perspective, but also makes fault finding and network longevity severely compromised. Network performance and fiber bend management, as I will explain later, will be key to how that network performs and giving you the ability to migrate to next generation PONs. So selecting the right architecture and equipment and reducing dependency on installer skill levels will aid future network compatibility. Looking at the impact of poor fiber management, if we consider this example of a microbend loss of 1 turn of a G657A2 fiber at a minimum bend radius of 7.5 millimeters, you can see the GPON downstream wavelength 1490 will actually provide an attenuation of approximately 0.2 dB. As we increase the wavelengths to accommodate XGS-PON, we can see that the downstream wavelength of 1578 on that same network will actually increase by 0.4 dB to give you a resulting 0.6 dB attenuation loss. This multiplied over multiple locations will obviously have a very large impact on your total link loss budget and may impact the reach of your network into the future. Overlaying this with NG-PON2, you can see the downstream wavelengths for NG-PON2 would further exacerbate this concern around poor fiber management. Poor fiber management is not the only consideration we need to take into account when looking at migrating to next generation PON. Quality is key for network integrity. In this example, we look at a low quality splitter and how it performs in the network. Humidity can have a very big impact on the optical splitter itself. If an inappropriate epoxy has been used or the inappropriate curing methodologies been adopted, delamination of that splitter and the fiber within the splitter can occur, which will ultimately lead to failure or high attenuation rates. Uniformity and stability over temperature is also going to be key to offer that quality of service, particularly for critical services that run over the network. Ensuring that the passive optical devices are manufactured and supported by the appropriate standard levels is going to be key to providing that network integrity and that level of service agreements that is required. CommScope is leveraging its global experience to help the local India team in supporting you as an operator to build the next generation networks. Leveraging the latest in plug-and-play technology, which will significantly improve speed of deployment, but also reduce that requirement for skill level installation and also deliver performance and integrity to your network. Leveraging our local best-in-class capabilities located out of Goa, we produce local manufactured solutions appropriate to the local market to help improve return on investment and significantly reduces the total cost of ownership. So as a way of summary, I'd just like to recap some of the key messages that I've tried to deliver during today's presentation. First of all, changes in the ecosystem. The way we use networks is evolving. It's driving the need for more stable, higher performance infrastructure to deliver increased bandwidth, to reduce latency, to provide quality of service and robustness in the network, whilst at the same time providing further access points for future scalable solutions. Network convergence can be used as a tool to help increase revenue streams or improve efficiency through offering more services over the same network. A prime example would be leveraging your fixed network asset to do backhaul on your wireless network asset. Coexistence can be used to facilitate multiple PON technologies along with point-to-point, along with WDM over a common infrastructure. This once again allows you to improve efficiency. It allows you to maximize your current infrastructure to its maximum capabilities and provide additional capacity over that existing infrastructure. In terms of existing infrastructure, the quality of what's being deployed today needs to be considered. Not only from a fiber management perspective, are the installation techniques appropriate, but also from a component perspective. Do your passive optical devices, are they able to support next generation PON wavelengths? Are they stable enough to provide a consistent quality of service offering to your customers? Finally, CommScope's here. We're here to help select the right flexible network topology that will help drive efficiencies and provide a ubiquitous fiber infrastructure to build and reduce the whole life costs. Technologies such as plug and play can be used to greatly increase speed of deployment and provide de-skilled installation techniques, removing the need for any ambiguity within your network. Thank you once again for the opportunity to present today. I hope the conference is going well and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Apologies once again, I cannot be with you in person, but if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me at paul.hubbard@commscope.com and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Have a good time. Thank you.
You are now unmuted. So I thank Mr. Paul. It's a very interesting presentation and the talk that he made about the technology enablement required and the way forward for the technology to evolve. So without taking much of your time, may I now request Mr. Manohar Raja to kindly have his presentation and technology awareness that he wants to bring out. Kindly start with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. We had a series of interesting speakers since morning, and people were talking about the challenges which typically plague our FTTH rollout in India. And we know that the FTTH connections which are there in India are way too less compared to many developing countries. We compare very poorly to China, and we also compare very poorly compared to other developing economies like Malaysia and Indonesia, etc. So how can instead of forums like FTTH definitely serve to highlight the challenges which FTTH service rollouts are involved, especially the ROW and issues which need to be resolved. But what we and another thing which context needs to be understood is the telecom consolidation also has thrown up another kind of challenge where I believe. For a digital India, we are heading towards an oligopoly, and may not suit the full aspiration to go to meet the vision of digital India. So what we think is, let us it's a good time opportunity for us to explore alternate business models, and this is what I want to say a few words on today. Can I move the slide? Yeah. Okay. So what we can think, some of the speakers refer to these models. FTTH need to be scaled out non-linearly. We need to leverage the local entrepreneur model strongly. There are many reasons for why we should do this. If you just think, if we have a target of having 200 million FTTH homes, and from where we are today, and we expect only this very few large monolithic telecom companies to solve that problem, I think it will be it will take time. Whereas we have manpower is reasonably cheap in India. We have local skill levels which are decent, and FTTH is pretty standard, and that's where the industry can come up with some standards and training and etc. Where a lot of local entrepreneurs can build FTTH service in their community. This is one model which we can do. Another thing which we think, because of the interest in Wi-Fi, WANI especially, fiber can also, FTTH can also mean fiber to the hotspot. A fiber-fed hotspot is equivalent to a shared FTTH service. And we had an interesting representative from RWA this morning. And yes, if RWAs are capable of managing their roads, their water lines and power connections, I think it is possible that RWAs may also be able to manage their fiber infrastructure and therefore provide a FTTH service of choice to their thing. And lastly, fiber to the village. This is the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. There have been projects working on that. First by the PSUs, then now there's a PPP model in progress. But all this in a thing. What is the catch? How can we build a service-led model to support this rollout? So first, let's discuss the local entrepreneur model. What is the challenge? Why can't local entrepreneur run an FTTH service? Is because ability to quality have the scale to that, or the access to the right sources. Another thing is it's a play wherein big content OTT content players have partnerships with telecom operators because of the kind of scale and reach they have, and smaller operators, smaller players do not have that kind of ability to aggregate content, and therefore cannot provide the kind of value creation for the end customer. Now, another challenge which the local entrepreneurs face is the ability to manage technology. I think services can be made in such a way that the technology complexity of managing an FTTH can be made very simple for them to ensure very high uptime of the FTTH infrastructure. At the same time, provide services of very high end by appropriate partnership upstream. And this part also was touched upon by one of the speakers earlier. For FTTH to really become sustainable, remaining a dumb pipe is a challenge. If some of the value which digital is able to bring to the end customer can be, or to the upstream service provider, can be captured to the by the local entrepreneur, I think his sustainability will increase remarkably. So what we think is we can do this. We have a partnership of network and ISP. So if somebody can aggregate content and peering and VAS services across the country for these entrepreneurs, and of course the last mile partner is the local entrepreneur. So this arrangement can actually work. We have tried this out ourselves, and we have about 3.2 lakh homes running on this model, and it can scale if it is done well. And this model actually can reduce the cost per user significantly and lower cost for delivery, and also because the local entrepreneur knows the community very intimately, is able to generate the right amount of demand. And the only thing is we need to find out how we can aggregate the revenue streams. So I think this is a very key thing, especially when in urban settings where there's a lot of density of FTTH subscribers, then the model becomes sustainable. But as you go away from the large cities, when you move towards smaller towns or and villages where the customer density is less, then this ability to capture a bit of the value chain, because we find that digital of course affects every value chain, whether it's logistics, whether it's agriculture, health, education, everything. But the FTTH provider, as long as he's reduced to a pipe provider and incurring significant cost, his viability becomes a bit more difficult. So I think I see the internet value chain has grown. Actually, in the beginning everything was equally there, but in the last decade or last few years especially, the value of transactions of the internet value capture is much higher, the content value capture is much higher, and therefore when access network, if a bit of the transaction and content value can be shared with the FTTH operator, then his sustainability will be much better. We have seen like some of how the leading operators have turning into platforms, because it's obvious they want to be part of the value chain, and they are building very formidable platforms. And there are of course pure OTT players. But if you want an entrepreneur-led model to work, then somebody has to build this over the top, so that the platforms are independent of the operator, and any of these small entrepreneurs can leverage the advantage of having an entrepreneur as opposed to a regular telecom service provider is physically located there. So it is just not digital. He can be the digital interface for upstream businesses. And I think this is a very significant advantage which a platform can be built to meet this requirement. Is physically close to the community. He can provide assisted internet to the community, especially in the smaller places and rural areas, and connect them to the appropriate upstream services. So this combination of physical proximity, as well as a carrier of being a digital entrepreneur, should create a definite impact and also increase adoption of internet for productive purposes. So when we talk about rural India, FTTH does not really come to mind, but FTTH is required there as well as anywhere in India. It's and FTTH can provide probably the best experience of digital. So therefore, we think the rural India can also be captured, provided that we fine-tune the product accordingly. The basic this matrix, it seems like a busy matrix, but actually it is taken from one of the studies by BCG. As we can see, that about 19% of the rural market is actually our mature users, and can if FTTH service is available, they can adopt it, they can afford it. and then after that it plays down the next wave, the younger, dark on the internet, the ambitious and late adopters who have less purchasing power. They all actually, these people need internet even more. So we feel the community Wi-Fi fed by by fiber would be the most appropriate to create digital impact there. And of course the home broadband and perhaps triple play can be restricted to the small segment. With this kind of fiber deployment for community Wi-Fi, high-speed Wi-Fi would definitely meet the digital aspirations of this community. So what I mean to say is, when we have a very big challenge like creating 300 million FTTH homes or 200 million FTTH homes, sometimes it pays to think small. And with 300 million FTTH homes, if you can create 1 million entrepreneurs, I'm sure we'll go a long way in not only meeting the digital goals, but also create entrepreneurship in India. Thank you. I'm available for taking questions now, or we can do it later.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Manohar Raja. I personally appreciate the efforts that Mr. Manohar Raja has been making in the digital enablement across the country, and particularly on the business model that he has been very effectively pushing it to see that the enterprise is encouraged for the digital highways to be created across length and breadth of the country. So his efforts leading the RailTel as an organization in the digitization process is something which is really exemplary, and particularly having a good focus on the rural sector is something which is done by very few in the country today, and to lead that process itself is a commendable job. So once again, sir, I thank you so much for the leadership that you have shown and the business processes that you have encouraged in leading the whole digitization process. So with this, we now come to our next speaker for the day, and may I now request Mr. Arnab Roy, CEO Tejas Network, to kindly start his presentation and enlighten the audience. Mr. Arnab.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me to the conference and giving me the opportunity to speak. Do I have control of the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
On the bottom of the slide, you will see arrow button to change your slide.
Okay, just 1 second. I need to. Okay. Okay, thank you once again. In the first half of the conference, the speakers talked about the need of fiber infrastructure sharing for providing multiple services and applications such as home broadband, business services, mobile backhaul for 4G, 5G, etc. For optimizing costs of precious fiber resources. In my presentation, I will speak about how to enable this sharing efficiently by leveraging convergence of multiple access technologies and backhaul technologies to make fiber-based broadband rollout profitable and with shorter payback times. So high-speed broadband, so high-speed broadband has become an ubiquitous requirement in our lives, right? And especially in these pandemic times, and many speakers have talked a lot about it. And it has, in these pandemic times, it has become almost as important to us as basic services of water and electricity. And apart from the internet that we are used to, newer applications of education, healthcare, etc., have become very critical. For enterprises, even for enterprises, the transformation to cloud, to the cloudification of business and services, had led to newer requirements of connectivity and faster broadband speeds. And it is clear that the fiber-based broadband access is the most appropriate technology to provide the service, the high-capacity service that these applications need. However, as many of the speakers talked about, a key obstacle to FTTH deployment is not only the difficulty and cost of a fiber rollout, but also the payback time for the investment, given a couple of challenges that we have. First of all, the challenge in last mile connectivity, even after there is a fiber pass in the neighborhood, even when an operator gets fiber in a neighborhood, connecting to the last mile is a challenge. And we talked about how RWS can help and what one happens in dense urban neighborhoods and so on. And secondly, even if you have a fiber pass in the neighborhood, what is the percentage of FTTH adoption that happens in that neighborhood? I mean, for some people in locality, it is an acceptable cost. For some, it is too expensive, and so on. So as a result of which, even if you have drawn fiber to that place, you don't have enough customers who have adopted it. So the studies, a lot of studies have shown that even with a fiber pass in a particular neighborhood, it takes anytime between 3 to 8 years for the payback period based on the rate of adoption that is happening for fiber to the home services. And given the last mile challenges, deployment of broadband services, in this particular scenario, over technology such as fixed wireless access is a means of quick customer acquisition in a neighborhood, while subsequently fiber-based access provides the longer-term solution. So you've drawn fiber to the neighborhood, you cannot reach a customer for a variety of reasons. So if you have the technology of providing a wireless access, either on a licensed or unlicensed band, that becomes a quick way of acquiring customers, starting the payback of your investment, and over time moving him to fiber for higher capacity services. So another opportunity that comes out of fiber pass in a neighborhood is for bandwidth services to the enterprises. In urban locations, business districts and residential areas are often co-located, and this provides the opportunity to utilize the same network to provide high capacity, highly profitable private line services to the enterprises. However, unlike home broadband users, enterprises demand stringent SLAs in terms of advanced QoS features, low latency, high availability, flexible bandwidth, security, etc. Right? And there are many enterprises who also use legacy TDM-based services for lease lines, etc., for legacy reasons, also for security and stuff like that. And most of those services are not supported over GPON or XGS-PON, but by carrier-grade, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 services using technologies such as access to OTN, carrier Ethernet, MPLS, etc. So, and being able to provide the services on the same access equipment provides the opportunity of monetizing fiber investments in a larger way. And I think every speaker from the operator community talked about that, the ability, that we need to do fiber sharing, we need to provide multiple services for the proper monetization of our fiber infrastructure. So the last, another important part is the backhaul network. So, yeah. So the last component of this fiber sharing comes in the form of the backhaul network. So as we know, the backhaul capacities have to go up because the average broadband speed expected to triple in the world over the next 3 to 4 years. And a high capacity backhaul is as critical to developing superior quality of experience than just providing fiber to the home over a GPON or a similar fiber access technology. So adequate backhaul bandwidth is absolutely critical for providing this quality of experience. And just like in access, fiber is the emerging de facto medium for backhaul. However, the service providers they want flexibility in terms of the technology choice they want, right? I mean, people want IP and MPLS-based transport. Some operators want carrier Ethernet. People want OTN for low latency and high capacity and so on. And then along with this, being able to aggregate the traffic and provide technologies of protection and all, we need very high capacity, terabit scale packet switching with 100 gig and multiples of 100 gig uplink as part of the backhaul network. So one of the conventional approaches, so as you can see, at the end of the day, we require for maximum returns on a fiber deployment is that's possible only when we combine all of these aspects of access and backhaul together. And the traditional way of doing it would be by deploying multiple network elements for fiber to the home, for carrier Ethernet, for fixed wireless access, and for backhaul. However, this results in high capex costs for multiple products, high opex costs of space, power, manpower, training, maintenance, etc. No, and this makes this kind of a building block approach to putting multiple products together makes it prohibitively expensive as a solution. So the solution to this problem is to build platforms which provide multi-technology access and integrates backhaul on the same system, and that is what we have done in our unique product. The 1400. We call it the 1400 UCB, the ultra converged broadband access product. So in the same platform, we provide access in the form of GPON, XGS-PON, NG-PON2, business Ethernet services, layer 2 VPN, layer 3 VPN, and so on, TDM access, along with backhaul technology over OTN, MPLS, carrier Ethernet, and so on. So this is an award-winning product which has been deployed successfully in several major networks across the world. So in conclusion, efficient sharing of fiber infrastructure is very important towards reducing the cost of fiber penetration. And we need enabling technology in the form of converged access and backhaul to be able to do this very efficiently. So a quick comment about a quick background on Tejas for people who are not familiar with us. We are a company, a 20-year-old company founded in 2000 and headquartered in Bangalore. We make telecom equipment as well as data networking and wireless equipment. We are #1 in optical aggregation products in India and top 10 among the top 10 worldwide. And the deployments in over 75 countries, over 500,000 network elements, and financially healthy public company based in one of the innovators of the Indian telecom industry. So thank you very much for inviting me, and that concludes my talk.
You are now unmuted. So I thank Mr. Arnab from Tejas Network for the very engaging discussion, the presentation that he made. Again, to mention that in BSNL also we are having Tejas as a partner for the GPON rollouts, and definitely the gear, the equipment which comes from Tejas has been doing really well in the field, and the details that he made out in further creating cost effectiveness and the better methods of rolling out the networks. I hope all listeners, the audience have got benefited. So thank you so much, Arnabji, for this very enriching piece of presentation that you made. And may I now request our next speaker for the day, Mr. Sudhir Kondar, who is the Country Director for DE-CIX. Kindly have your presentation made live, and we'll be really happy to listen to that presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dua. And first of all, it feels exhilarating to be a part of this esteemed panel. While you have been giving your insights into your relationships with various speakers, glad to let you know that we are happy and proud to have BSNL as one of our customers as well on our interconnection platform, both across Mumbai, Delhi, and shortly across the two other geographies where we operate, which is Kolkata and Chennai. So while Paul and Mr. Raja have said the context extremely well, I wouldn't delve too deep into too many aspects of the technical part of it, which is what I had made a little bit earlier. But I would want to spend time and use this 15 minutes effectively to show what value proposition do we bring in important for us to have interconnection play a role in the current Indian economy. Most important, at least this pandemic has at least shown all of us that it has become extremely important for everybody, like a basic service. If you like, roti kapda or makan was important once upon a time. So now it is roti kapda, makan, and internet, so to speak. And that's the relevance that we've seen, at least on our platform, wherein over the past one year plus, we've seen some humongous traffic growth. So a country with about 700 odd million users as of now, and very soon, I'm sure not even by 23, as I've mentioned out here, but sooner than that, we should be on the 800 million mark, with a very healthy average of about 11 gigs of usage per day. The growth and upward scaling is the only thing that is in place. And how is it that we see FTTX contributing to this rapid adoption and the necessity to have a robust and reliable internet? While the advantages, if I can say so, briefly, would be on both the sides. One, from a service provider side, which has been extremely well articulated by my speakers earlier and in the earlier session as well. So I wouldn't want to be at the cost of sounding repetitive, say a couple of points and then move on. What advantage does it have for an user perspective? So from a service provider's perspective, we have ourselves seen this in the recent past in our engagement with a couple of them who were currently brave enough to, during the pandemic, also go into shifting and upscaling themselves into providing FTTX to their customers, whether it is easy and fast installation, a better customer experience because of loss of network, less network losses, or reliability, which is most important in today's time, and the scalability as well. So as we speak about advantages on the service provider side, which have been well articulated earlier as well, there are a few which is a dire requirement at users like us who currently are into a hybrid work environment on work from home as well as work from office. And that's where this comes into play, wherein you have enough and more high bandwidth service that is possible. It gives us flexibility to do a lot of stuff. While I am downloading something, at the same time I am able to upload stuff equally well. It saves a lot of time, ultimately gives me balance both on my professional front and as a personal front when I'm a FTTX user, so to speak. But as we speak on advantages of both sides, there are some small cons as well, as I would want to say. And one of them would typically be the financial investments that need to be made initially upfront in order to upscale the service. And from a consumer's point, his monthly fees would obviously go in a little bit higher. But my own experience by dealing in a lot of customers, not now, but since 2002, is what I can say confidently is that when you provide him best-in-class service and he requires what he gets out of a service provider in terms of lower latencies, higher speeds, better security, better service, the whole gamut of services that one is able to offer with the FTTH, he's well willing to pay. At least the recent experiences that we had, wherein within the last 5 months, we've seen somebody adopt this, roll it out for his customers, and also become one of our largest customers with about 40 gigs of peering being taken. Clearly shows that yes, this is something that works, while the consumer also paid a little bit more than what he used to pay earlier. And obviously, the availability, which has been spoken so widely from morning till now, is definitely one of the cons, and this is where we constantly endeavor to see more adoption of this as we go by. And that is where I think I would spend the rest of my time in trying to articulate how an interconnection platform like ours, which is one of the globe's largest interconnection platform, and the top one, so to speak, in the APAC region, the Mumbai property, at least of ours, amongst 29 countries and 148 exchanges across, is able to contribute to this endeavor of various entrepreneurs or organizations which want to move in typically from a traditional mechanism to the FTTH front. We currently have seen and we have received feedback for some people as much as 93% optimization on their bandwidth cost. And that might sound a little bit math as of now, but once you look at it from a usability point of view, you see that huge amount of capex that goes in procurement of raw internet bandwidth, as we call it locally, actually moves to the platform. And what is it that the interconnection platform does is something I would just want to spend 2 minutes. I'm sure a lot of us would know, but for the benefit of the audience who would have joined us in terms of their interest levels, we are an exchange which gets both the sides on a similar platform. The IXP typically keeps traffic local and confined to a area whereby it reduces your cost, improves your quality of service, improves your security, and obviously the latency comes down for a very large extent. Now, while I would just run through for the next 30 seconds, what did I mean by helping people optimize costs, which are extremely important, is for an exchange like ours, when we have this adoption and we've seen massive traffic numbers, which we can, briefly delve if I have time, hard stop for 15 minutes, is somebody paying 25 lakh rupees for a telco grade bandwidth today, when couple of costs are obviously one-time costs, like the port cost or the cross connect cost at the data center, his colo, and the point-to-point that he would require. But if you observe what he was earlier paying for at a 25 lakh price point comes down to about 100 meg of raw internet bandwidth that took for typically non-enterprise class requirement that the consumer might have today. And that is the kind of number that we see on the table, and it will obviously go higher when you have more capacities being consumed by the ISP or the enterprise for that reason. And that is where I was saying that when we've seen this particular case where during the pandemic somebody adopted a stand of moving from his current setup and getting on to FTTX, we were able to see the cost optimization, and that humongous capex that he saved helped him put it in the right strategic investment and grow his FTTX reach within his geography of operation, which he was. So, in summation of what I was saying, what are the basic benefits that one can derive as a customer, both on the enterprise side or from the consumer side, and also the service providers, would be one, which I just articulated some time back, the savings on the bandwidth front. But as we always say, latency is the new currency, and that is one of the most important things in our life today, while we have the task at the same time. So it takes care of latency not only from a technical standpoint, where you have any which ways better latency is possible when you have a connected home, but when you are also with a interconnection platform like ours, it's a double whammy for both the sides, the consumer as well as the provider, because that's where your customer delight comes into play. As I mentioned, it increases your network security again on a double layer as compared to any technology, FTTH by default is a more secure network. And when you have an interconnection platform paired with it, you will have a better network security available. The resilience automatically goes up because, again, it's a resilient network on both sides, better router control, and most important, where I would spend a couple of minutes, is the access to peering services and service providers, which DE-CIX India brings to the table here for all providers, wherein we are able to, through an access code, one-time investment, as you might want to say, give the flexibility to our customers to not only serve the peering services, but also access to the 4 major cloud service providers, which is AWS, Azure, Google, and Oracle. So this, as much as I would be able to give you a guesstimation, would be covering 92% of the Indian cloud market space as of today. And in my interactions with a lot of CIOs, CXOs, what I've been able to see in the recent past is most of them during COVID or around that time have gone back to the drawing board and have accelerated their cloud adoption, if not already done, from an on-prem thought process in terms of strategic investments to movement into cloud. And when you do that, the most important thing in a hybrid work environment would definitely be an access to your major cloud service providers, and especially our kind of a service whereby you have access to all at the same time. So if you're an organization with test and dev requirement, you would require a AWS and an Azure at the same point. And our network partners would be very, very simplistically able to do this turnaround in a shortest possible time, as compared to the traditional mechanism whereby the enterprise would go figure out what is happening with the telco, where the discussion itself would start from a 8-week onwards kind of a RFS date to the endpoint. Here, I would like to make a point which is extremely important and imperative for not only the fiber service providers or those who are listening to me, that we've successfully demonstrated to our customers the value that we bring to the table by giving direct cloud to 2 various spectrums, if I can say that loosely. One is UDAN, where we were able to do an entire pre-sale, sales, implementation, and all tick marks on the green boxes by saying 9 working days. For a 10G, Microsoft Azure Direct Connect for them, or for an NTPC where we did a 50 meg within 7 working days, along with the same enablement right from pre-sale, sales to implementation. So that in itself was an exhilarating piece of information when we spoke to folks at Oracle, when we got them onboarded on our platform, wherein they were extremely keen to do this with their extended set of salespeople in terms of enablement to understand how is it that we can help customers on the other side. While a lot of my interactions with the ISPs tells me that more and more of them are adopting their outreach to the enterprise-based RFS locations that they would want to go into, having direct cloud as a good revenue model for them makes, especially as it goes on a transfer price mechanism, it makes life more easier for them in terms of getting better customer stickiness, better share of wallet, and some fantastic margins, which a couple of our ISP customers have already started enjoying as I speak to you. So net, I think while we have a few pros and cons that we spoke about, both put together, combined, have been able to give, and that's what I've seen in a couple of my interactions with my customers earlier. Adoption of FTTH for further outreach for their customers and a tie-up with an interconnection platform of DE-CIX's stature has helped them give their customers what is need of the hour today, wherein it is not only increased data availability, but also being available all the time without hassles of security, without hassles of speed issues, buffering, and stuff like that. And that's where a couple of numbers I would want to place on the table, where we've been able to quickly upgrade ourselves during the huge surge of traffic growth that we saw during the pandemic, and as high as 1,007% in terms of gaming and CDN and OTT content. We could see a traffic growth of about 1,315%. So these high spurts of demand surges that came from our customers, we could serve them well. And once this happens more in future with the FTTX being adopted rampantly, I'm sure we will have a better proposition for our customers in serving them well. I think I have just about touched my timeline, and would like to thank all of you all for having given me this opportunity to present our take on how is it that we will be able to help the ecosystem and take things forward for a better digital and digitally great India. Thank you, Shashi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sudhir. And me as one sitting inside a telco would be in a best position to appreciate the need, the benefit of interconnection. We see at BSNL that half our traffic is today flowing via our caching and peering servers, which are the links with the Googles and Facebook and others. And that's how the latency also, which is the major concern with the customer, has been brought down substantially. And as you mentioned, the cost of doing business has a very high correlation with the quantum and quality of interconnections that we run. So going forward, as we move towards a more flatter world, the traffic going via international gateways and getting through so many hops, we have to cut it down. And the best would be having a traffic terminated within 1 or 2 hops. And that's possible only if we very elaborately work on these interconnections and the caching and peering concept. So it was a very engaging presentation that you made. I hope all listeners definitely would like to connect with you on improving the network latency aspects or the quality of service aspects. So I hope this would lead to a better digital world for tomorrow. And with this presentation, we have come to the conclusion of this session, which was largely around innovation. So I'm very thankful to Mr. Shashi for bringing in the brightest brains who could talk about innovation, both from a technology perspective and as well as the operator perspective. As Mr. Raja spoke from the operator side and others spoke from the technology side, I think both the sides you have got addressed through the esteemed speakers that we had for the day. So our journey for the digital transformation would continue, but the contribution which is made by the technology service providers, the innovation that happens inside the technology organization is something which is very fundamental to the speed of growth that we need to have in today's era. I still remember my days when I was passing out of my college some 25 years back. One of the interviewers asked me, what is your dream when you leave the college? And I was asking him that I need to have one Sun Spark system because I worked 2 years on Sun Spark in my college and a 2 Mbps pipe at my home so that I don't have to shuttle between my lab and my home to do all what I want. And he said, fantastic, 2 MB will be very soon at your home. And today when I was looking at 1 gig and 10 gig, it's entirely a different world that we live in. But still people love to have the comfort of their home and the productivity of their office getting gelled together through the beautiful network pipes that are coming left and right with the help of fiber. So I personally really feel very delighted to get engaged with these innovation processes, both at the people level, at the process level, and the technology level. So thank you once again to all the speakers and particularly to Shashi ji for having everybody together on this forum. Thank you so much.